"Get your filthy hands off me, you worthless little servant." The words hit Elena Vance like a slap across the face. But it wasn't the insult that made her stumble backward. It was the violent shove from the woman in the red Valentino dress, the one whose champagne flute Elena had accidentally brushed while navigating the crowded floor. And then she was falling. Time seemed to fracture into slow, horrifying pieces. The silver tray flew from her hands, crystal glasses shattering against the marble floor like broken stars. Her back hit something solid, not the ground, but warmth, muscle, the unmistakable frame of a man seated in the corner booth. The most dangerous corner booth in the entire city. The music stopped. The laughter died. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Elena's mind caught up with her body one terrible second too late. She was sprawled across someone's lap, her hands gripping what she now realized was an impossibly expensive suit jacket, her face inches from a chest that rose and fell with controlled, predatory calm. She looked up, and every drop of blood in her veins turned to ice. Dominic Castellano. The Castellano, head of the most powerful crime family on the eastern seaboard. The man whose name was whispered in fear from Wall Street to the darkest corners of the underworld. The man who had buried 3 rivals last month alone, allegedly, and had walked into this exclusive underground establishment as if he owned it. Because he did own it. He owned everything. His eyes were the color of a winter storm, gray, cold, and utterly merciless. A scar traced a thin line from his left temple to his jaw, a permanent reminder that even kings could bleed. His dark hair was swept back, his face carved from shadows and sins, and at 34, he commanded more power than most governments. The room held 200 people. Not one of them breathed. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're going to need to see how this ends. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs like a caged animal trying to escape. She scrambled to move, to apologize, to somehow undo the last 5 seconds of her miserable existence. But her body wouldn't cooperate. Her limbs had turned to water, and she was trapped there, frozen in the lap of the most dangerous man she'd ever encountered. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't mean, someone pushed me. I swear stop. One word. That was all it took. His voice was low, quiet, barely above a murmur. But it carried the weight of absolute authority. The kind of voice that didn't need to shout because it had never been disobeyed. Elena stopped. She couldn't look away from his eyes. They were studying her with an intensity that made her feel like he was peeling back every layer of her carefully constructed life, examining the frightened girl underneath. His men had risen from their seats, hands moving toward concealed weapons, bodies coiled and ready to eliminate whatever threat had dared to touch their boss. One gesture from him, one flick of his finger, and Elena knew she would be dragged outside and never seen again. But Dominic didn't gesture. He didn't move. Instead, he did something that confused everyone in the room, including Elena. He leaned closer. His breath was warm against her ear, his lips brushing the shell of it as he spoke words meant only for her. Words that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "Found you, little sparrow. Your father's ghost has been waiting for you to come home." Elena's world stopped spinning. Her heart didn't just skip a beat. It collapsed entirely, falling into a void of shock and terror that swallowed everything she thought she knew about her own existence. Her father. He was talking about her father. The father who had died 8 years ago. The father whose funeral she had attended in secret, wearing a wig and glasses, because even at 17, she had been told she was being hunted. The father who had made her promise, with his last breath, his hand gripping hers in that dark hospital room, that she would run, hide, become someone else, and never, ever look back. "They'll come for you, Elena. They'll never stop looking. You have to disappear." And she had. She had buried Elena Vance in an unmarked grave alongside her father's memory. She had become Elena Morgan, waitress, nobody, invisible. She had spent 8 years looking over her shoulder, moving from city to city, taking cash jobs, living in cheap apartments, trusting no one. 8 years of running. And now this man, this monster in an Armani suit, had found her. How? The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. "How do you?" Dominic's hand moved. For one horrifying moment, Elena thought he was reaching for a weapon. Instead, his fingers caught her chin, tilting her face toward the light. He studied her the way a collector might examine a priceless artifact, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. "You have his eyes," he said quietly, almost reverently. "Marcus always said you would grow into them." He was right. Marcus. That was her father's name. A name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in nearly a decade. A name that felt like a ghost reaching out from the grave to grab her by the throat. "I don't know what you're talking about," Elena managed, but even she could hear the lie trembling in her voice. "My name is Morgan. Elena Morgan. I'm just a server. I don't know anyone named Elena." His voice was patient, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Stop. We both know you're not a very good liar. Your father wasn't either. It's what made him so valuable. And ultimately, what got him killed. Drop a comment right now if you're already screaming at your screen. This story is just getting started." Asterisk asterisk. Tears burned the backs of Elena's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She refused to give this man the satisfaction of seeing her break. She had survived 8 years of running, 8 years of fear, 8 years of sleeping with one eye open and a knife under her pillow. She would not crumble now. "Let me go," she said, and this time her voice was steady, cold. The voice of a woman who had nothing left to lose. "I don't know you. I don't know what game you're playing. But I'm just a nobody. A waitress. I don't have anything you want." Dominic's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was darker than that. Sadder. "That's where you're wrong, little sparrow. You have everything. You just don't know it yet." Before Elena could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Sir." One of Dominic's men, a mountain of muscle in a black suit, had approached the booth. His face was carefully blank, but his eyes flickered to Elena with something that might have been concern or warning. "Vincent Marchetti just walked in," the man said. "He's asking to speak with you. Says it's urgent." Elena felt Dominic's entire body change. The gentle predator who had been studying her with such strange tenderness was gone. In his place was something colder, harder, a man carved from ice and iron. "Marchetti," he repeated. The name dripped with contempt. "He's not alone. He brought 6 men. In my establishment." Dominic's voice was soft, dangerously soft. How ambitious of him. Elena didn't understand what was happening, but she understood the shift in energy. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dominic's men were moving, subtle and coordinated, positioning themselves throughout the space like chess pieces preparing for war. And she was still sitting in this man's lap like a fool. She started to move again, and this time, Dominic let her. But as she slid off his lap and stumbled to her feet, his hand shot out and caught her wrist. His grip was firm but not painful, holding her in place with effortless strength. "You're not leaving this building," he said. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of fact. "Not tonight. Not until I decide what to do with you. You can't just. I can do whatever I want." His eyes bored into hers. "Your father saved my life, Elena. He saved my entire family. And he died because of it. I've been looking for you for 8 years. 8 years of dead ends and cold trails, and watching the vultures circle, waiting for you to resurface." His grip tightened slightly. "Now that I've found you, do you really think I'm going to let you walk out that door and disappear again?" Elena's mind was spinning. Her father saved his life? Her father, who had been a quiet accountant with a corner office and a gentle smile, had somehow saved the life of a mafia boss? "That's impossible," she whispered. "My father was. He wasn't. He didn't know people like you. People like me." Dominic's laugh was hollow. "Your father worked for people like me for 15 years, Elena. He was the best financial strategist the Volkov family ever had. And when he found out they were planning to ambush my father's convoy and slaughter everyone inside, including my younger sister, who was 14 at the time, he made a choice. He warned us. And then he ran." The ground was shifting beneath Elena's feet. Everything she thought she knew about her father, about her childhood, about her entire life, it was all crumbling. "The Volkovs hunted him for 3 years," Dominic continued. "They finally found him in a hospital in Denver. Made it look like a heart attack. But we both know better, don't we?" Elena's knees buckled. She would have fallen if Dominic hadn't pulled her back, steadying her against the edge of the booth. "My father was murdered," she breathed. "He was murdered, yes. And the people who killed him are still out there, still looking for you. Because your father didn't just warn us, Elena. He took something when he ran. Something the Volkovs have been desperate to recover for 8 years. something that could destroy their entire empire. Elena shook her head, her vision blurring with tears she could no longer hold back. I don't have anything. He didn't give me anything. Not that you know of. Dominic's voice was almost kind now, which somehow made everything worse. But you're the key, little sparrow. You always have been. And tonight, by some miracle or twist of fate, you fell right into my lap. A commotion erupted near the entrance. Raised voices, the sound of tables scraping against the floor. Elena turned to see a group of men pushing their way into the establishment, led by a silver-haired man in a crimson tie whose smile was all teeth and no warmth. Castellano, the man called out, spreading his arms wide in a mockery of greeting. I hope I'm not interrupting anything intimate. Dominic's expression didn't change, but Elena felt the danger radiating off him like heat from a furnace. Marchetti, he said, you have exactly 30 seconds to explain why you've invaded my property. Choose your words carefully. They may be your last. The silver-haired man, Marchetti, ignored the threat. His eyes slid past Dominic and landed on Elena, and something in his expression changed. Recognition. Hunger. Well, Marchetti breathed. Could it be? He started to laugh. A cold, cruel sound that made Elena's blood run cold. You found the Vance girl. After all these years. Marchetti shook his head in disbelief. Mikhail Volkov is going to be very interested to hear about this. If you're still with me, smash that like button and drop a comment. Part 2 is about to blow your mind. Dominic moved so fast Elena barely saw it. One moment he was seated, the next he was on his feet, his body positioned in front of hers like a shield. Marco, he said, his voice calm and deadly. Close the doors. No one leaves. The man who had spoken earlier nodded once and disappeared into the crowd. Marchetti's smile faltered. Now, Castellano, let's not be hasty. Dominic took a step forward. Then another. Each movement was slow, deliberate, predatory. You walk into my establishment uninvited. You threaten to expose someone under my protection to the Volkovs. And you think I'm being hasty? Under your protection? Marchetti's eyes darted to Elena, then back to Dominic. Since when? She's a waitress. She's no one. She's Marcus Vance's daughter. Dominic's voice dropped to a near whisper. And Marcus Vance gave his life so that my family could live. That debt is sacred, unbreakable. If you think I'm going to let you hand her over to the people who murdered her father, you are profoundly mistaken about who I am. Elena stood frozen behind Dominic, her mind struggling to keep up with the revelations crashing over her like waves. Her father, an accountant, a gentle man who read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bike, had been part of the Mafia, had saved an entire family from assassination, had died protecting secrets so dangerous that people were still hunting for them 8 years later. And somehow, impossibly, she was now standing in the middle of a war she never knew existed. Marchetti's face twisted. The friendly mask slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. The Volkovs will pay 3 times whatever she's worth to you. 4 times. Name your price, Castellano. My price. Dominic stopped walking. He was close enough now to touch Marchetti, close enough that the older man had to tilt his head back to meet his eyes. My price is your life, and I'm collecting it tonight. Marchetti's hand moved toward his jacket. His men surged forward, and then the room exploded into chaos. The last thing Elena saw before rough hands yanked her behind the booth and shoved her toward a hidden doorway was Dominic turning, his eyes meeting hers for one suspended moment. Stay alive, little sparrow, he said. I'm not done with you yet. And then Marco was pulling her through a dark corridor, gunshots echoing behind them, and Elena Vance, the woman who had spent 8 years being invisible, realized that her old life was over. The running had stopped. The war had just begun. You've just finished part 1, and I know you're not stopping here. Subscribe right now so you don't miss part 2, where secrets will be revealed, trust will be shattered, and Elena will discover that the man who terrifies her might be the only one who can save her. Now, let's continue with part 3. 3 days. For 3 days, Elena had been a prisoner in a gilded cage, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by manicured gardens and stone walls and men with guns who watched her every move with expressionless eyes. 3 days of silence. 3 days of questions that went unanswered. 3 days of pacing the floor of a bedroom that was larger than any apartment she'd ever rented, with silk sheets and crystal chandeliers and a view of rolling hills that felt more like mockery than luxury. She was trapped, and no one would tell her why. You should eat something. The voice came from the doorway. Elena whirled around to find a woman standing there, mid-40s, elegant in a simple black dress, with silver streaking through dark hair that was pulled back in a severe bun. Her face was kind but guarded, like someone who had learned long ago that softness was a liability. I'm not hungry, Elena said. You haven't eaten in 2 days. The woman walked into the room and set a covered tray on the table by the window. Dominic is concerned. Dominic can go to hell. The woman's lips twitched, the first hint of genuine emotion Elena had seen from anyone in this house. I'll be sure to pass that along. Elena immediately felt guilty. This woman hadn't done anything wrong. She was probably just as trapped by this world as Elena was. I'm sorry, Elena said quietly. I don't understand what's happening. No one will explain anything to me. I don't know why I'm here or what anyone wants from me, or, her voice cracked. I just want to go home. The woman's expression softened. She walked closer and took Elena's hands in her own. Her grip was warm and surprisingly comforting. My name is Celeste, she said. I've worked for the Castellano family for 23 years. I was here when your father came to warn us about the ambush. I was here when Dominic's father gave the order to protect you and your father at any cost. She squeezed Elena's hands. And I was here when we learned that Marcus had been killed and his daughter had vanished without a trace. Elena's throat tightened. I was just a kid. I didn't know what was happening. One day, my dad picked me up from school in the middle of the day, and we just drove. For years, we never stopped moving. He never told me why. He was protecting you, Celeste said. The way he protected this family. From what? The woman hesitated. For a long moment, Elena thought she wouldn't answer. Then, from the truth. We're diving deep into the secrets now. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is your sign. Drop a like if you're riding with Elena through this. Before Elena could ask what that meant, the door opened again. Dominic. He looked different than he had at the restaurant. Less polished, more human. He wore a simple black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. His hair was slightly disheveled, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping. For some reason, that small detail made Elena's heart do something strange. Something she immediately resented. Leave us, Celeste, he said. The older woman nodded and slipped out of the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Elena and Dominic were alone. The silence stretched between them, heavy with words unspoken. Elena kept her chin high, her arms crossed over her chest. She refused to show him how afraid she was. Are you going to explain why you've kidnapped me? She asked. Or should I just keep guessing? You're not a prisoner. Really? Because the locked doors and armed guards tell a different story. Dominic moved to the window, staring out at the gardens below. In the afternoon light, Elena could see the lines of tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched like he was fighting some internal battle. Vincent Marchetti is dead, he said. I killed him personally. But before he died, he managed to get word to the Volkovs. They know you're alive. They know you're with me. And they know that whatever your father hid before he died, the evidence that could destroy their entire organization, is connected to you. Elena's blood went cold. I already told you, I don't have anything. My father never gave me. Think. Dominic turned to face her, his gray eyes burning with intensity. Think back, Elena. Before he died, before you started running, was there anything he gave you? Anything at all? A letter? A photograph? A piece of jewelry? Elena opened her mouth to say no, and then stopped. A memory surfaced. Blurry, fragmented, buried under years of trauma and grief. Her father's hands, trembling, pressing something into her palm as he lay in that hospital bed. His voice, weak but urgent. Asterisk, keep this safe, sweetheart. Don't let anyone see it. Don't tell anyone you have it. Someday you'll understand. Asterisk, a locket. A small, antique locket on a delicate silver chain. Elena had worn it every day since her father died, so constantly that she had almost forgotten it was there. It had become part of her, as natural as breathing. Her hand moved involuntarily to her chest, where the locket rested beneath her shirt, against her skin. Dominic's eyes tracked the movement. His expression shifted, surprise, then understanding, then something fierce and triumphant. You do have something, he breathed. You've had it this whole time. Elena's fingers closed around the locket protectively. It's just a necklace. It was my mother's before she died. It's just sentimental. May I see it? No. Dominic took a step closer. Then another. Elena held her ground, even as her heart hammered in her chest. Elena. His voice was softer now, almost gentle. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to take anything from you. But I need you to trust me. Just for a moment. Your father gave his life for my family. I'm trying to repay that debt. I'm trying to protect you. But I can't do that if you keep fighting me. Trust you. Elena's laugh was bitter. You're a mafia boss. You kill people for a living. 3 days ago, you murdered a man right in front of me. A man who was going to hand you over to the people who murdered your father. Dominic's jaw tightened. Would you have preferred I let him live? Elena had no answer for that. This tension is unreal. Comment, trust him, or don't trust him, and let me know what you do in Elena's position. Slowly, hating herself for it, Elena reached behind her neck and unclasped the locket. She held it out toward Dominic, but didn't let go. If you try to take this from me, she said quietly, I will find a way to kill you. I don't care how powerful you are. This is all I have left of him. Dominic's eyes met hers. For a moment, something passed between them. Something electric and dangerous and entirely unexpected. I believe you, he said. He reached out and took the locket carefully, cradling it in his palm like it was made of glass. His fingers found the small clasp on the side, and he clicked it open. Inside was what Elena expected, a tiny, faded photograph of her parents on their wedding day. Her mother in white lace, her father young and smiling, before the world had broken them both. But Dominic wasn't looking at the photograph. He was examining the back of the locket itself, running his thumb along the edges. There's something here, he murmured. A seam. It's a false back. Elena's breath caught. What? Dominic reached into his pocket and produced a thin blade, a knife so sharp it seemed to part the air itself. With surgical precision, he slid the blade along the seam and pried open the hidden compartment. A small, folded piece of paper fell out. Elena caught it before it hit the ground. Her hands were shaking as she unfolded it. Once, twice, 3 times, until she was holding a document covered in dense, handwritten text. Numbers, names, dates, bank accounts, shell corporations. And at the bottom, a single sentence underlined 3 times. If this reaches the wrong hands, we are all dead. But if it reaches the right ones, it will burn them all. What is this? Elena whispered. Dominic was reading over her shoulder, his breath warm against her hair. It's everything, he said. Bank accounts, money trails, a complete record of every illegal transaction the Volkov family has made for the past 20 years. This is the evidence your father stole. This is what they killed him for. This is what they've been hunting you to recover. Elena stared at the document, trying to process what it meant. With this, Dominic continued, the Volkovs are finished. Every politician they've bribed, every judge they've bought, every murder they've covered up, it's all here. This is enough to bring down their entire empire. So take it. Elena thrust the paper toward him. Take it and use it. Destroy them. Avenge my father. I don't care. I just want this to be over. Dominic didn't take the document. Instead, he gently pushed her hands back down. It's not that simple. Why not? Because there's a mole in my organization. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Someone close to me has been feeding information to the Volkovs for years. That's how they knew your father was in Denver. That's how they found him. And that's how Marchetti knew you would be at the restaurant that night. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Someone betrayed my father? Yes. Someone in your organization? Yes. Dominic's face was carved from stone, but his eyes held something that looked almost like guilt. I've been hunting the traitor for 8 years. But they're careful. Clever. They've covered their tracks. Then how do you know they exist? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Because your father told me, he finally said. In the message he sent before the Volkovs found him. He said he'd discovered something, a connection between my organization and theirs. Someone playing both sides. Someone close enough to my family that they knew our movements, our weaknesses, our secrets. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Someone I trust. The days that followed changed everything. Elena didn't return to the bedroom suite. Instead, she found herself drawn into Dominic's world, attending meetings, studying documents, learning the intricate web of alliances and betrayals that made up the criminal underworld. She told herself it was because she wanted answers, because she needed to understand what her father had died for. But the truth was more complicated than that. The truth was Dominic Castellano. He was nothing like she expected. Yes, he was dangerous. Yes, he was capable of violence that would haunt her nightmares. But he was also fiercely protective, quietly generous, and unexpectedly kind to the people who depended on him. She watched him settle disputes with wisdom rather than brutality. She watched him visit the children's wing of a hospital with no cameras, no publicity, just genuine care in his eyes. She watched him sit with a dying old man who had served his family for 40 years, holding his hand until the very end. And slowly, against her will, something shifted inside her. One night, Elena found herself on the mansion's balcony, staring at the stars. The air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine from the gardens below. She heard footsteps behind her, and she didn't need to turn to know who it was. "You should be asleep," Dominic said. "I could say the same about you." He came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the stars wheel overhead. "I keep thinking about my father," Elena said quietly. "About who he really was. I thought I knew him. I thought he was just a normal dad. Someone who read me stories and helped me with my homework and made terrible jokes at dinner." She laughed, but it caught in her throat. "How could I have been so blind?" "You weren't blind," Dominic said. "He was exactly who you thought he was. A man who loved his daughter. A man who wanted to protect her. The other things, the work he did, the world he moved in, that was a mask. A role he played. But you saw the real him." Elena turned to look at him. In the moonlight, his features were softer, the sharp edges smoothed by shadow. He looked almost vulnerable. "Why are you being so nice to me?" she asked. "Nice?" He raised an eyebrow. "You know what I mean. You could have just taken the evidence. Used me as leverage. Treated me like a pawn. Instead, you're—" She gestured vaguely. "This." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Your father saved my sister's life. She was 14 years old. She would have died in that ambush if he hadn't warned us." He turned to face her fully. "For 8 years, I've carried the weight of that debt. For 8 years, I've wondered if there was anything I could have done differently. If I could have saved him the way he saved her." "There wasn't," Elena said softly. "They would have found him eventually. Maybe." Dominic's hand rose, hovering near her face. "Or maybe I could have tried harder. Been smarter. Protected him the way he protected us." His fingers brushed her cheek. Just the lightest touch, barely more than a whisper of contact. But it sent electricity racing through Elena's entire body. "You look so much like him," Dominic murmured. "But you're stronger. Braver. You've survived 8 years alone, with no one to protect you. No resources. No safety net. And you're still standing. The chemistry is off the charts. Drop a fire in the comments if you're feeling this tension." Elena knew she should pull away. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. Everything about this situation was a disaster waiting to happen. But she didn't move. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now we find the traitor. We use the evidence to destroy the Volkovs. And then—" He hesitated. "Then what? Then you're free. To go wherever you want. Be whoever you want. Your debt is paid, Elena. You don't owe me anything." She searched his face, looking for the lie, looking for the catch. But all she found was sincerity. And something else. Something that looked a lot like longing. Before either of them could say another word, a phone buzzed in Dominic's pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The softness vanished. The predator returned. "What is it?" Elena asked. "Marco." Dominic's voice was ice. "He's found something. Evidence about the mole." They moved through the mansion quickly, descending to the lower levels where Dominic's war room was located. Marco was waiting for them, his face grim, a folder in his hands. "You're not going to like this," Marco said. "Tell me." Marco looked at Elena, hesitated, then back at Dominic. "Maybe she should," she stays. "Tell me." The big man took a deep breath. "I traced the communications leak. The signal originated from inside this house. From the secure wing. That's impossible. Only 4 people have access to the secure wing." "I know." Marco handed over the folder. "That's why this hurts." Dominic opened the folder. Inside was a single photograph. Elena couldn't see who was in the picture, but she saw Dominic's reaction. The way his face went pale. The way his hand trembled, just slightly, before going deathly still. "No," he said. "This is wrong. This has to be wrong. I checked it 3 times, boss. The communications, the timing, the access logs. It all matches. Show me." Elena moved closer, reaching for the folder. Dominic pulled it away. "Show me," she repeated, more firmly this time. "If this involves my father's death, I have a right to know who betrayed him." For a long moment, Dominic didn't move. Then, slowly, he handed her the folder. Elena looked at the photograph, and her world shattered. It was Celeste, the kind woman who had held her hands and spoken of her father with such warmth. The woman who had been in this house for 23 years. The woman Dominic trusted like family. But that wasn't what made Elena's blood run cold. It was the second photograph beneath the first. Celeste, younger, standing next to a man Elena would have recognized anywhere. Mikhail Volkov, the head of the Volkov family. And the caption beneath the photograph, Celeste Volkov, Mikhail's younger sister. Planted 1992. "She's been a spy," Elena breathed. "This whole time. She's been." The lights went out. Gunshots exploded in the darkness. And Elena felt rough hands grab her from behind, a cloth pressing over her mouth, a sickly sweet smell filling her lungs as the world dissolved into nothing. The last thing she heard was Dominic's voice, raw with fury and fear. "Elena. The traitor is revealed. Elena has been taken, and everything is falling apart." Part 3 is the final chapter, and I promise you, you're not ready for what's coming. Subscribe now. Like this story. Comment, "Save her," if you're riding with Dominic. The finale drops next, and it will break you. Now, let's continue with Part 3, Pain. That was the first thing Elena became aware of. A throbbing, pulsing pain that radiated from her temples and wrapped around her skull like a vice. Her mouth was dry, her tongue thick and heavy, and when she tried to open her eyes, the world swam in a nauseating blur of light and shadow. "She's waking up." The voice was cold. Female. Familiar. Elena forced her eyes to focus. She was in some kind of warehouse, industrial, abandoned, with rusted machinery looming in the darkness like mechanical skeletons. Her hands were bound behind her back, her ankles tied to the legs of a metal chair. The air smelled of oil and decay. And standing before her, immaculate in a tailored suit despite the grimy surroundings, was Celeste. "The traitor. You," Elena croaked. Celeste smiled. It wasn't the warm, kind smile Elena remembered from the mansion. This smile was razor-sharp and pitiless. "Me," she confirmed. "Surprised? You held my hands." Elena's voice was raw with betrayal. "You told me about my father. You pretended to care." "I did care." Celeste's voice was almost gentle. "You're a remarkable young woman, Elena. Truly. Your father's daughter in every way. It's almost a shame things have to end like this." "Why?" The word tore itself from Elena's throat. "Why would you do this? The Castellanos trusted you. They treated you like family." Something flickered in Celeste's eyes. Something that might have been regret, or might have been nothing at all. "The Castellanos killed my brother," she said quietly. 25 years ago, when the families were still at war. Dominic's father put a bullet in Alexei's head and left him to die in the street like a dog. Her jaw tightened. "They talked about peace, about alliances, but I never forgot. I never forgave. And when Mikhail asked me to infiltrate their organization, to wait and watch and gather information," she spread her hands. "How could I refuse?" Elena's mind was racing, fighting through the fog of whatever drug they'd used to knock her out. She needed to think, needed to find a way out. "So my father," she said slowly, buying time. "He discovered what you were doing. That's why the Volkovs had to kill him. Your father was clever." Celeste's expression hardened. Too clever for his own good. He found discrepancies in the Volkov accounts, money moving in ways it shouldn't. Money that traced back to me. He was going to expose everything. "So you killed him." I passed along his location. Celeste's voice was flat. "The kill order came from Mikhail directly. I simply facilitated." Can you believe this betrayal? Comment, "Justice for Marcus," if you want to see Elena get her revenge. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage flooded through Elena's veins, burning away the fear, the confusion, the helplessness. This woman, this monster wearing a human face, had destroyed her entire life, had taken her father, had robbed her of 8 years of peace. and now she had the audacity to stand there and explain it like she was discussing the weather. Dominic will come for me, Elena said, keeping her voice steady. He'll find you. And when he does, Dominic. Celeste laughed. Oh, sweetheart. Dominic is a little busy right now. She gestured, and a man emerged from the shadows, stocky, scarred, with the dead eyes of a killer. He was holding a tablet, and on the screen, Elena could see a building engulfed in flames. The Castellano compound, Celeste said, currently burning, along with most of Dominic's men. We hit them just after I took you. 3 simultaneous strikes on their primary locations. By now, Dominic himself is probably not dead. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Celeste spun, her eyes widening. The scarred man raised his weapon, scanning the darkness. And then the shadows moved. Dominic emerged like a wraith, covered in ash and blood, his shirt torn and his face carved from fury. He was limping. There was a dark stain spreading across his thigh that suggested a bullet wound. But he moved with the lethal grace of a predator who had long since stopped caring about pain. Behind him, slipping from the darkness like ghosts, came Marco and a dozen other men. No, Celeste breathed. That's impossible. You should be dead. I should be a lot of things. Dominic's voice was terrifyingly calm. But people keep underestimating me. You'd think after 23 years, you would have learned. He walked toward Celeste, each step slow and deliberate. The scarred man raised his gun, and Dominic didn't even look at him, just lifted his own weapon and put 3 bullets in the man's chest without breaking stride. The body hit the ground. Celeste backed away, her composure cracking. Dominic, wait. Listen to me. I can explain. Explain? Dominic laughed, but there was no humor in it. You killed Marcus Vance. You spent 8 years pretending to mourn him while secretly celebrating that you'd eliminated the one person who could expose you. You fed information to the Volkovs that cost 17 of my people their lives over the years. And tonight, you tried to burn my family too. The ground. He stopped walking. What could you possibly explain? I'm not the enemy. Celeste's voice rose. The Castellanos, your family, they're the ones who started this. They killed Alexei. My father killed Alexei in self-defense. Dominic's voice was cold. Alexei ambushed him at a peace negotiation. He had a knife to my mother's throat. My father did what any man would do to protect his wife. And you know this. You've always known this. Celeste went pale. Mikhail lied to you. Dominic took enough justice, not the kind that comes from power and fear. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You knew him better than I did. No. Dominic shook his head. He showed me what he needed me to see. The strategist. The survivor. But you. He reached out and touched her cheek gently. You saw the man he really was. The father. The protector. The one who would have given anything to keep you safe. He did give everything. He did. And now, Dominic's voice softened. Now you're free. The Volkovs are done. The threat is over. You can go anywhere. Be anyone. Start the life you were supposed to have 8 years ago. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at the dawn breaking over the horizon. The first light of a new day. The first day of the rest of her life. What if I don't want to go anywhere? She said finally. Dominic went very still. What if? Elena turned to face him fully. What if the life I want is right here? She watched the walls around his heart crumble, one by one. Watched the hope break through the darkness in his eyes like sunlight through storm clouds. Elena. His voice was rough. You don't know what you're saying. I'm not a good man. The things I've done, I know exactly what you've done. She stepped closer. I know who you are. I know what your world looks like, and I know it's dangerous and complicated and nothing like the quiet life I thought I wanted. She reached up and cupped his face in her hands. But I also know that you spent 8 years trying to find me. Not to use me. Not to hurt me. But to protect me. To honor a debt you didn't owe. To keep a promise to a dead man who saved your family. That doesn't make me worthy of you. Maybe not. Elena smiled through her tears. But maybe I'm not looking for worthy. Maybe I'm just looking for real. Dominic kissed her like a drowning man reaching for air. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her close, pressing her against him like he was afraid she might disappear. And Elena kissed him back with everything she had. Every year of running, every night of loneliness, every moment of fear dissolving in the heat of his embrace. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, the sun had fully risen. The warehouse behind them was empty, The last of the chaos finally settled. So what happens now? Elena asked. Dominic's lips curved into the first genuine smile she had ever seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger, softer, almost boyish. Now, he said, we rebuild. Together. No more running. No more hiding. No more secrets. And the family business is changing. His smile turned wry. I made a deal with the feds, too. Limited immunity in exchange for cooperation in dismantling the Volkov network. But after that, I'm done. Legitimate investments. Clean money. A life that doesn't require sleeping with a gun under my pillow. That sounds. Elena paused, searching for the right word. Boring. Dominic laughed, a real laugh. Warm and surprised and wonderful. Maybe. But boring sounds pretty good right now. Especially if I'm being boring with you. We're in the final moments now. If this story hit you in the feels, drop a love and tell me which part was your favorite. 6 months later, the wedding was small. Private. Held in the gardens of the Castellano estate, which had been rebuilt from the ashes of that terrible night. The same roses bloomed, the same fountain sparkled, but everything felt different now. Lighter. Cleaner. Elena stood at the altar in a simple white dress, her father's locket around her neck. Inside, where the evidence had once been hidden, was a new photograph, one of her and Dominic, taken on the balcony where they had first almost kissed, the stars bright above their heads. Dominic stood across from her, looking simultaneously terrified and ecstatic. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a year, but his hair was slightly mussed, and there was a nervous tremor in his hands. It made Elena love him even more. Do you, Elena Vance, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? The officiant asked. Elena looked into Dominic's eyes, those gray, storm cloud eyes that had once terrified her and now felt like home. I do, she said. And do you, Dominic Castellano, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice cracked slightly. God, I do. More than anything. Elena laughed. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Dominic didn't need to be told twice. He gathered Elena in his arms and kissed her thoroughly, deeply, with the kind of passion that made the small crowd of witnesses erupt into cheers and applause. When they finally broke apart, Dominic pressed his forehead against hers. Your father would be proud of you, he murmured. I know. Elena smiled. He already is. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and the guests had departed, Elena stood on the balcony one last time. The stars were bright. The jasmine was blooming. And somewhere in the distance, an owl called out across the quiet grounds. She felt Dominic's arms wrap around her from behind, felt his warmth against her back. What are you thinking about? He asked. Everything. She leaned into him. How different my life was a year ago. How scared I was. How alone. She turned in his arms to face him. And how none of that matters now. Because I found you. Or you found me. Or we found each other. You fell into my lap, Dominic reminded her with a grin. Shut up. She laughed and swatted his chest. I was pushed. Fate, then. Fate, she agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Dominic, Elena said finally. What did you whisper to me that night? In the restaurant? The thing that made me freeze. He was quiet for a moment. Then, found you, little sparrow. Your father's ghost has been waiting for you to come home. Why did you call me little sparrow? Dominic smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made Elena's heart skip a beat. Because your father used to talk about you. When he was working with my family, warning us about the ambush, he had a photograph of you on his desk. A little girl with wild hair and bright eyes. He said you used to love watching the sparrows in the garden. Said you'd spend hours just sitting there, completely still, waiting for them to come close. Dominic's voice was soft. He called you his little sparrow. Said someday you'd learn to fly. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I never knew that. He loved you more than anything in this world, Elena. And he gave his life so that you could live yours. Dominic brushed a tear from her cheek. So live it. Fly. Be free. I am free, Elena whispered. For the first time in my life, I'm finally free. 1 year later, Elena sat in a sunlit office, a manuscript open on her desk. The Sparrow's Song. A memoir of secrets, survival, and Second Chances by Elena Castellano, she traced her fingers over the title page, feeling the weight of every word. Her story, her father's story, the truth, finally told. The book would be published next month. The proceeds would go to a foundation she and Dominic had established, the Marcus Vance Trust, dedicated to helping families of whistleblowers and witnesses who had sacrificed everything to do what was right. It wasn't justice. Not really. Nothing could bring her father back. Nothing could undo the years of fear and loneliness. But it was something. It was a beginning. Mrs. Castellano? Elena looked up to see her assistant standing in the doorway. Your husband is here. He says something about a lunch reservation you're going to be late for. Elena laughed and closed the manuscript. Tell him I'm coming. She stood, grabbed her jacket, and paused at the window. Below, in the courtyard, she could see Dominic waiting by the car. He looked up, as if he sensed her watching, and waved. Elena waved back. And then, for the first time in her life, the little sparrow spread her wings and flew toward everything she had ever wanted. You made it to the end. You stayed for every twist, every revelation, every moment of heartbreak and hope. That means you're part of this journey now. If this story moved you, if it made you gasp, or cry, or scream at your screen, do 3 things. 1. Subscribe so you never miss another story like this too. Like so more people can find this and experience it too. 3. Comment your favorite moment, your favorite line, or just let me know how you're feeling right now, because stories like this, they're not just entertainment. They're connection. They're proof that even in a world full of darkness, there's always a way back to the light. Thank you for reading. Thank you for caring. And thank you for believing in happy endings. Until next time.